Mardi Gras has been celebrated in one form or fashion in New Orleans for 300 years. And that, my friends, is a lot of celebrating. Over the years, this carnival has become more elaborate with crowds and crews and, I'll have to explain a few words as we go along. Crews are the groups that put on these parades. The crews were more generous and socially conscious this year than I have seen in years past in what they call the throws. The throws are the things that they throw from the floats, the beads and the toys and such. One group, the crew of Iris, this year threw branded coffee in containers, not just like throwing it out. Red beans and jambalaya mixes, soap, toothbrushes, all of which were locally made. And the king of Hermes, the crew of Hermes, threw 100 strands of real pearls, each valued at more than $1,500. To say that Mardi Gras is an experience of excess, a celebration of the extremes, would be an understatement. New Orleans is predominantly a Catholic city, so it is no surprise that this celebration has thrived. For weeks prior to the New Orleans is determined to get all of its most outrageousness out before Ash Wednesday, and they have to give up things for Lent. Now, people give up candy or meat. When I was a child, for this 40 days of Lent, we had fish every Friday, and we were encouraged every year we were encouraged to give up sweets for the 40 days of Lent. Mardi Gras in New Orleans has been a tradition in my family since I was born. I was born in New Orleans. I remember going to Mardi Gras when I was a small child, camping out on the side of the street to get the best spot for the biggest parades, and sitting atop the seat of a ladder not unlike this. There's so many of these that are part of the New Orleans tradition, so that I could get the best throws, or my family could get the best throws. You see, they generally, if you're on a float, and I have been, they tend to look for the children or the pretty women to throw things to. And what I remember about Mardi Gras was people fighting for the throws, pushing and shoving and knocking each other down for toys and beads. And if somebody threw a strand of beads and two people grabbed it, they both pulled with all their might and the beads would shatter and spread everywhere. And we're just talking about plastic beads. Cheap plastic beads. Or plastic toys, or doubloons, they're little coins that they throw, that people keep in collections. And some crews have thrown and still throw special items every year. Iris throws decorated high heel shoes, painted. A friend of mine, or not a friend of mine, a person that was next to me in the parade caught one. It had a little rubber ducky on the toe, and all painted. And Zulu, they throw decorated coconuts. What they're trying to do with those nowadays is not to throw them, because that became problematic. People would get hit, and so now they hand them down to people. But that gives you some sense of what Mardi Gras is really like. I want to show you a short video now of what Mardi Gras looks like from someone who's been participating in it for years. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was tiring, overwhelming. I participated in a truck parade when I was in elementary school. I was in a cast at the time, but I still threw beads from the truck parade. But I stopped going to Mardi Gras when I was 18. I had a choice. I did bring my lovely wife Martha to one Mardi Gras early in our relationship so that she could better understand what she was getting into when she joined our family. I'm not sure I was able to get her to ever go back again. And I did ride in one of the biggest parades during Mardi Gras, Bacchus, when I was in my early 30s, because it was my father and brother who'd been on the crew of Bacchus for generation. You know, we now have 3 generations riding in Bacchus. Today, my brothers and my nephews continue to ride in Bacchus. And my middle brother is the sergeant of one of the floats. They have the lieutenant and the sergeant, and they do different things. His float is called Bacacan, which was the float you saw at the end there. It's 3 different floats. You just saw the first one. They're all attached to each other. Now, Mardi Gras, if you want to go, and I think it's fun. I go every 10 years, whether I need to or not. The gaudy costumes, the outrageous behavior, the excessive drinking, well, they didn't do a lot for me after I've been going for 18 years. They seem to lack any kind of spiritual grounding or emotional connection for me. And I wondered if I ever would go again, especially after I became a Unitarian Universalist. You know, the African Americans carrying the flaming torches, flambeaux, before hooded and masked white men on horses and floats, so that people would toss them coins. It just upset me. I attended this year with joy in my heart because this was my mother, my 84-year-old mother's last Mardi Gras. And I wanted to share it with her. It was something that was important for her life. And my aunt and brothers and their wives and my nephews were attending. So we were going to get to spend 5 days together, something we don't often get to do. And my middle brother got me into the Pete Fountain. I don't know if you know who Pete Fountain is. He's a New Orleans jazz clarinetist, very famous. Half-fast walking parade with him. This was our costume. I don't have in many black, light blue tuxes, but I do now. and a dark blue hat. I thought I was going to get a yellow hat, but they finally gave me a dark blue hat. So, we're the first parade on Mardi Gras Day, Fat Tuesday. So we go before any of the big parades. So I decided it would be okay, just this once more time, to go without worrying about any kind of spiritual enrichment, just to kind of be with my family and enjoy being together. After all, not everything has to be about spiritual enrichment. Right? Right? Okay. But I went with some trepidation. Because within me was that old person that fought for beads and knocked people down and was greedy for the beads and tokens. Often, and as these 18 years, I ignored the beauty of the floats and the pageantry and the music so that I could get my throws. But my perceptions, experiences, and yes, even spiritual growth surprised me during this past week. So one of the first things I want to share with you is this. I want you to look at this. These were, before even the first parade comes out, there are the hawkers. They're selling all kinds of beads and tokens and flags, and I want you to look closely at the flags. What flags do you see? Well, if you look over, we'll see one that we have up here. The pride flag, which has 5 arrow-shaped lines added to the 6-color rainbow flag, which is widely recognized as a symbol of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities. And the flag also includes black and brown stripes, along with the colors pink, light blue, and white, which are used for a transgender flag. So you see those are up there. But you'll also see a Trump flag. Let's go, Brandon. A marijuana flag, a thin blue line police flag, a purple and gold and green flag, all being sold by that vendor. But not just that vendor, all the vendors had the exact same. What does that mean? Martha and I, and even my politically conservative aunt, talked about this. My aunt believing that this was a sign of the gumbo of cultures that coexist peacefully and define Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Martha and I wondered at the transactional culture clash right before our eyes. A sort of laissez-faire of, if you will buy it, I don't mind selling it. It was startling. What was also startling to me this year was the generosity and relative politeness of the vast majority of people. It really renewed my sense that there are good people out there. And that wasn't the Mardi Gras that I remembered. I saw smiles and heard thank yous while people held out their hands and said, "Throw me something, mister!" And yet even as they did that, there was generosity, sharing throws with one another. This little girl was given beads and trinkets by mostly white people who surrounded her, bringing her joy and a bright smile. And my mother, who couldn't stand, she had to sit in the handicapped section in these bleachers that we were in, who couldn't go out there and say, "Throw me something, mister," was offered bead after bead after bead by perfect strangers. Now I wondered, was this due to Mardi Gras having been absent for 2 years because of COVID? Was it due to the shortened parade routes and excess of beads? Or was there some sort of cultural change? I mean, it could have been the Creole and jazz and marching music that was everywhere. Everyone seemed to be joyfully dancing and most surprisingly showing kindness and generosity to one another. That certainly wasn't the Mardi Gras that I remembered. And I wondered, as I watched, could this be how our country could come back together? Despite our differences of politics and color and culture, so many differences in our country and our world, could this new Mardi Gras spirit spread like a virus around our country or our world? By the time Martha and I arrived at the Bacchus Ball, there's more beads than me there. I had collected a lot of beads and toys. But I could not even imagine the amount that I had after the ball. The crew was throwing everything they could off the floats, everything they had left, because they didn't take any of that home. And the floor of the ballroom was covered in stuff, beads and toys. And I had collected so much that I had a cloth bag that was 4 feet high and 2.5 feet wide. It was so heavy the bag was splitting. And I was struggling to carry it. And I poured it out on our bed in a hotel room and looked at my treasure, and I no longer felt a need for more. But more, I felt an overwhelming sense of excess. What had I done? I no longer felt a need to call out, "Throw me something, mister." Instead, I wondered how I could donate all this to those who weren't able to celebrate. I had noticed over the week that my middle brother, and Martha were giving away beads to all the service industry workers unable to attend the parades, who had to work to survive. Martha gave a saleswoman whom I bought a couple of shirts from, someone who couldn't go to the parades, tokens, beads of all the different parades that we went to. And she was so grateful. After looking at this excess, I kept a few beads and trinkets that had meaning, and I donated the rest. The hotel actually had a place that you could go and donate beads. And we just read an article that it goes to a nonprofit, and they sort the old, elderly people sort the beads, and they actually throw them the next year. And I kept the beads. They were throwing beads in bags that hadn't even been unopened. And so I took those and put them in my bead bag for the half-fast walking parade. You know, I have to tell you, I felt relief after getting rid of all of those trinkets and toys and getting ready to give away the rest. And I wondered if Mardi Gras could hold some new meaning for me after all. As I went off to the half-fast walking parade, this is a picture of my brother and sister-in-law. You can see he with the several hundred people dressed exactly the same. We were stopped along the way to meet some of our spouses who dressed up as angels, because this year was My Blue Heaven in honor of Pete Fountain having passed away some years ago. For me, being on that parade was more about sharing joy and being generous with others and sharing my abundance with everyone. I found walking. This is the first time I've done a walking parade, as opposed to riding in a big float. So much more personal. I could approach people, say Happy Mardi Gras, hand them a token or a doubloon or a bead or a cup or a toy, and they'd say thank you, and we all say Happy Mardi Gras to one another. We'd walk down the streets of the city and down into the Bourbon Street area, and I could see joy in people's faces as I hand them things. So many big smiles, so many happy people. I made a point to look for those people who didn't have any beads or any toys or any doubloons. And I noticed my brother was doing the same. He even put beads into empty chairs, because people camp out all over and they put their chairs there to hold their space. He would put beads in empty chairs so that people would come back and find that they had something before they even got settled for the parades. No one pushed or shoved or badgered, despite there being no rails. There were no rails between us and the parade people who were viewing the parade. They could have come out and said, give me something, but they stayed, in their chairs or whatever, and we walked over to them. I ran out of beads probably, 9/10 of the way through the parade. And all my fellow half-fast walkers would come over and give me beads and tokens and say, you throw some of these. And I did, and I got almost all the way being able to give people things. I know what you might be thinking, that these were just beads and toys. But me, as I walked down the street, it was a way of connecting with people I didn't know. A way to spread a little joy into their life, to momentarily lighten whatever burden or sorrow they may be carrying. As we passed the rows of people camped out and ready for the rest of the parades on Fat Tuesday, the news of Ukraine and COVID and shootings and legal assaults on women's and trans rights faded just a little bit. We were all in the moment, joyfully dancing, sharing, giving, receiving, being in communion with one another for just a little while. Grateful for the moment, and for our time together, even as we were aware of our grief and pain and loss and trauma. My friends, pain and joy don't cancel each other out. They are part of the human condition. As poet William Blake said, "It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and this we rightly know. Through the world we safely go. Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine." We need to create joy and beauty even as we are aware of the pain and grief and loss within ourselves and in the world. This is also a part of the work we do to make the world a better place. Mardi Gras is not a perfect celebration, and New Orleans is not a perfect city. And yes, Martha and I did have a little brush up with an overserved patron at a bar, and I did see my fair share of people who were greedy in the moment. But they were the exceptions, and soon forgotten in the midst of celebration. This new Mardi Gras spirit I witnessed reminded me that no matter what the politicians or talking heads may say, we are a country of fairly decent people, willing for the most part to show others a little kindness. And I hope that a little of that Mardi Gras spirit, with its joy and generosity, might make a positive difference in this divided country. Laissez le bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll, and may it be so.